evening and welcome to another exciting program. Now, where are we? I think, that's it. I've just unmuted Caroline. Sorry, Caroline, I've unmuted you there. No, nothing personal. And last week we covered eugenics and we're carrying on from that. And before we've even started, there's been a Q&A in the comments section. And I'll just read out what a gentleman called Emin, there he is, Emin Sudama has said. Sorry if I pronounced your surname incorrectly. I'm terrible at pronouncing people's names. It said the last installment
was very interesting. Hope you can talk about Stanley Johnson's 2012 Guardian interview in this one, or if not, maybe the next one. Well, he did speak. He spoke to the Guardian a few times in 2012, didn't he, Chris? In fact, he can't stop talking for somebody who's supposed to be a non-entity.
Well, let's face it. I mean, Boris Johnson's father wouldn't be a eugenicist. Would he, Caroline?
Oh, what was that book he wrote? Was it 1982? He wrote a book called, now we think it's called The Virus, but it was originally called, was it the Marburg virus? And not to lose an opportunity with the virus at the minute, that book was reissued and he called it The Virus. That was issued during last year to make a bit more money.
What a shock.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, he's somebody that we need to investigate more fully. I know that he had a house that was on the HS2 property line, and he managed to sell out at a nice, tidy sum. But it also, I mean, I'm doing at the moment so many different topics, it's quite difficult to keep on top of everything. I'm also focusing on the environmental issues because, of course, the environmental issues it's one of the items on the UN Sustainable Goals. So it's not only about population control, but it's also about the environment as well. And we had a quick look before we came on air. And not only did we see that he'd written that book, which we knew about anyway, but he had actually spoken, I believe, or certainly had been interviewed by Conservative at Home in 2015. He was very concerned about the UK population, which is very strange, really, when you consider, and he was talking about numbers and how many more houses that would need, but yet successive governments have been bringing more and more people in, because in 2015, we hadn't actually voted to leave the European Union. And of course, Stanley Johnson was a Remainer. So on the one hand, he's concerned about the size of the population and how many more houses we'll need, but yet he was happy to have open door immigration. It does not make sense, does it?
It certainly doesn't make sense. And, people talk about the Khalerjee plan and things like that. But what they don't look at, I mean, I think it was either the last show or the show before, I showed a brief film of two Canadians who have looked into the population, and we're not having enough children. And it's a crisis, not overpopulation, but underpopulation, because there are places in Italy and Spain now, villages, where there's no young people to carry on, in these villages. And there's parts of Asia that are, I wouldn't say vast wastelands, but what's happening is that a woman needs to have 2.3. I don't know how you have a 0.3 of a child, but that's statistically 2.3 children to keep a race going. And it's down to 1.7, 1.2. I think in Scotland it's 1.2. And by about 2030, and I mean, we've got United Nations Agenda 2030, by 2030, Europe is in a lot of trouble. And what they're doing, they're bringing people in from other cultures, other areas, to, inverted commas, boost up the culture, boost up the population. But what they're not doing is addressing the problem. And the problem was known about in the 1930s. The fact is, we're not having enough children. That is the problem. So they're making it look as if we're overpopulated by bringing in loads and loads of immigrants. And it's not their fault. I'm not blaming them. I mean, let's face it, if you or I were those people, you would want a better life. It's the people that's behind it. And apparently Blair quietly admitted that the Labour Party had a policy of going to a lot of these third world countries and setting up shops and whatever, advertising, come to Britain, it's the place to be. And we got good welfare possibilities. They enticed people from third world countries here. And it was more of a political reason, because they are more likely to vote for the Labour Party than anything else. And
well, I mean, the thing is, the Khalerjee plan, you just touched upon that. The idea is, and I did a video on this about a year ago now, that the man of the 21st century will be of mixed race. The people we're not allowed to criticize, they are the people pretty much pulling the strings on this planet. And, that's why we wait on God, because he's the ultimate controller. But whilst that's going on, these people want all of us to be effectively eradicated and turned brown. And, it's being forced upon us with the 3 million people coming in from Hong Kong. And, of course, the signing of the Marrakesh Declaration. We don't hear that so much these days. What happened about the Marrakesh Declaration? So anyway, so we've got Stanley Johnson. I hadn't been aware, but he'd actually been one of the first people from the UK that had been working in the EU Parliament. Did you know that?
No, I did not. No.
So you've got these people who get moved. He was an MP as well. You get these people, like, for example, I've been talking about the environmental issues and flooding in Somerset. And you have this Baroness Young. She was put at the top of the RSPB in 1999. And at that particular time, fortuitously for her, she was able to control some project with the EU Water Framework Directive to allow more and more flooding, to reclaim the land in places like Somerset. So she was part of chiefly in the RSPB, because the idea was these wetlands would be turned over for the birds. So she's gone from the RSPB, and then the following year she went and headed up the Environment Agency, so where they can then issue the directives and get the people doing exactly that. So there are certain people that go from post to post to post. They're all supposed to be interviewed without any favoritism, shall we say. And it just shows that it doesn't matter how educated you are if you're not part of that elitist club.
You're spot on. It's not what you know, it's who
you know.
That's right. And I mean, when you were talking about this deliberate flooding, now, you remember when we had those terrible floods in the Midlands? I've forgotten how many years ago it was now, but it was about 3 or 4 years ago, I believe. And I was listening to a local radio station, and there was an elderly gentleman. He must have been in his mid to late 80s, and he was quite a senior person in River Authority, and he wasn't scheduled to go. It was a phone-in program, and he came on and he said, in my day, he said, in the 1960s, we used to dredge the rivers, and the spoil would go on the sides, and it helped the trees, and we never had any flooding problems. And then they cut back and they stopped us dredging the rivers. So what happens when it rains now? The rivers are being full up with silt, and he said we used to clear the silt out. It was river management, he said, and they're cutting down the trees, and the trees help to soak up a lot of the water from the river, and it keeps the trees going through the summer. And he said now, because what happens, the rivers flood, and then in the summer they virtually dry out and the trees start to die. And when the trees die, they don't replace them. And then at that point they said, thank you very much, we've got to go on to the next level.
You're not allowed to say this, because Full Facts have got hold of this about lack of dredging, and they wrote an article last year which basically said, oh, some places wouldn't benefit from dredging. So it's just such a scandal. So she's now gone on from the Baroness Young, that is. She's been in the Care Commission, and then she's now gone on to heading up the Woodlands Trust. And of course, what's coming through Parliament at the minute, but an environmental bill. And it's going to cost the people at home, I guess, a lot of money. And also, these flood victims, I know we're going off topic here with the eugenics, but there's hundreds of flood victims. I was talking about it earlier this afternoon. There are hundreds of flood victims that are yet to receive any cash promised under the government scheme. You've got disaster victims in tears. They're awaiting compensation, which goes back as far as November 2019. And hundreds of flood victims whose homes were deluged are just not getting that money coming through. And they're living in fear of another flood because, of course, Boris Johnson had said, oh, there will be more and more floods, because they're building up to people thinking it's all about climate change. So they said, you see what I'm saying? That the property flood resilience scheme, as it's called, is worth up to £5,000 per homeowner who's been devastated by the floods over the last 2 years. And it helps families pay for floodgates, the raising of the electric sockets in your house, and other sort of measures. But a lot of councils have hardly paid any money out at all. So you've got people now. I mean, are they just waiting for people to die? Because they're building more and more houses on floodplains. I mean, you're an architect, Chris, and I hope you'll back me up on this. I know that in years gone by, I was very well connected with the building industry for a little while, and you would not be allowed to build houses on floodplains, but a lot of that's gone out the window now, hasn't it?
Totally out of the window. And it reminds me of a major project I worked on. I won't mention the name of the company because I'd like to live a few more years on this earth, but it's a very big name, shall we say. And it's a massive industrial complex, and they were building on a floodplain, and the local environmental group protested outside the gates of this project, and there's security there and that. And being a contract bloke, it was how much? And unfortunately, I was a bit mercenary in those days. Oh, that's a good contract. I think I'll go there. And I wouldn't do that today. And what happened is this large organisation. I'll tell you off air the name, Caroline, afterwards. What they did is they kindly gave a donation to this environmental group. Isn't that nice of them? And they gave them advice. And this environmental group turned towel overnight. Literally overnight. They changed, and there was no protest outside the gate or anything like that. And they had they had advisors go and help them on environmental issues. Isn't that nice? Because there's two types of environmentalists. There is the people like us, and like most people, that obviously you don't like pollution and things like that. And then there is the fake environmentalists who want to turn us back to the Stone Age and probably destroy the earth at the same time, because things like electric cars, they're more polluting than petrol and diesel engine cars. because they use lithium, and there's huge lithium mines in Africa with children working like slave labor and doing more damage to the earth than you could ever think of, because electric cars are keen on the environment, which is a complete load of nonsense. It's like sort of shuffling pollution here and pollution there and moving things around. Like, for example, we're getting batteries being made in China and then shipped halfway around the world, when Britain is one of the leading countries in hydrogen technology, and which is a much cleaner and more environmentally friendly. And then you've got silly windmills, which are a danger to not only aquatic life when they're offshore, but to birds as well. They're killing countless thousands, if not millions, of birds. And the noise that they set up is driving people mad who live nearby, because you think all day and all night you got that noise. It's driving them out of their minds. So we've got this fake environmentalism and real environmentalism. And let's face it, with real environmentalism, no, we don't want to live in a polluted society. But then when you look at diesel engines and petrol engines now, they're so clean, and with coal-fired power stations, they've got scrubbers on them and things like that, they've really advanced in the technology, but they get thrown all that away for this fake environmentalism. And of course, what's going to power the electric cars? Silly windmills? No.
Well, environmentalism. I mean, we've got HS2 being built and lots of natural habitats being destroyed. But let's get back. Shall we get back to the eugenics bit? Because I remembered what you were going to. You had some homework to do, Chris. Oh, good afternoon, Angela. Thank you for popping along. I can see that writing. I can't see the Facebook writing. And I think people sometimes say hello. And I'm not being rude, but I can't read it without putting my glasses on. So it's like on and off, on and off. And I'm trying to keep my train of thought. Eugenics. Now, I did a supplementary show on Saturday about people like Wellcome, who headed up the Wellcome Trust. He was an American-British guy, and he married the daughter of Barnardo's. And you were going to tell us something about Barnardo's. Can you remember what you were going to talk about? Because the Barnardo's had the orphanages. So we've got the head of the medical trust. I think it's classed as the largest medical charity in the UK, but please do your research, because it's difficult to remember everything, because it is just like a spider's web, a very tight spider's web. So Wellcome, he married into the Barnardo's family, and they were Jewish, were the Barnardo's. And so what do you know about the orphanages?
Well, Barnardo's, I was going to look more into Wellcome Trust, but I've been doing architectural work this week, so I've been a bit busy. But Dr. Barnardo's, I was brought up to believe he was a marvellous man. Hang on, let's hold the lapel. A marvellous man who saved orphans throughout London, and and then they have the soft music in the background. And I remember when I was a kid, I saw Blue Peter. Do you remember Blue Peter? And that program.
I mean, we're slightly different ages, shall we say, but I remember as a child, when I went to school, I was given a Barnardo's money box. Do you remember? It was a house. Do you remember that?
I remember that they did a program about Dr. Barnardo's, and it's very tearful. What a marvellous man he was. Hang on, I got to hold the lapel again, because you always got to do that. Marvellous. Well, if you look through the Victorian newspapers of the 1870s and 60s and whenever, because I think he was born in 1845, he was half of the people that we are not allowed to criticise, and he actually kidnapped children off the streets, and he went to court 88 times because he believed that he was a kind of missionary. And because of that, he didn't carry on his, I think he's half Jewish, and he was actually, I believe, a Christian. And he believed that he wanted to save these children from a terrible life, and they had living parents. And a lot of the parents tried to get their children back. 88 times he was in court, and he almost went to jail because a woman who he stole her child, because it could be an unmarried mother because the father had died. It could have been any problems, but he actually kidnapped the children and sent them to Canada and different places like Canada, Australia, where who knows what happened to them. I know that a lot of children that went to Australia became like slave labor. So he wasn't the Mr. Nice Guy. What a pleasant man. That is a situation where I believe that the official historians have kind of, they have predicted the past. And this is what we have all the time, people that predict the past. And instead of predicting the future, they predict the past. And he wasn't what he's set out to be. And you can look that up. That's 100% truth. He kidnapped children. Now, what happened to those children? It seems to go into a lot of dirt there. And he wasn't a doctor. He studied to be a doctor, but he didn't pass the exams, but he kept the title of doctor in his name. Because it sounded good. And there's a lot of people that believe that he may have been Jack the Ripper, although I don't believe that, and I don't want to go off at a tangent. And the reason I don't believe that he was Jack the Ripper is I believe the evidence is pointing more at Churchill's father and the royal physician and a couple of other people, because the bodies, except one, when they found them, they'd been drained of blood, and they were taken away from the area where they were and taken back. And it's all to do with Prince Eddie, and that is a completely different subject for another program, and I won't go down that route. So we'll stick back.
Right. So basically, we're talking about the NHS. We were talking about eugenics and last week, and the people who were involved in the setup of it were people like William Beveridge, Winston Churchill, and they were members of the Eugenics Society. And we have now got a Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, whose father wrote a virus book in 1982, whose father had been an MP, and who had been one of the first people to work in the EU or the EEC from the British side. So we've got these key people who know what their role's going to be in the future, which leads me on to Matthew Hancock, because last week's show, I ended up by just giving a brief resume of Matthew Hancock about how he had basically lied about failing to turn up to a show and how he'd been excluded from a TV show. And he was told that wasn't quite the case. And of course, now, since last Wednesday's show, Matthew Hancock has been found guilty of various misdemeanors, shall we say. We don't want to get sued, but he has been found very guilty. And he was actually on, I think it was Good Morning Britain yesterday, and Piers Morgan tried to get some sort of apology out of him. And in actual fact, we talk about narcissistic people. All he wanted to do was get people to praise his department, which effectively was him being praised. He denied that we didn't have enough PPE. Whether you go along with the story or not, I mean, that is a fact. We didn't have enough PPE, and he would not agree. When they've had all these years to plan for, and to me, the biggest scandal. It's to be fair, it's not the policies. It's the actual the planning of the mortuaries for years in advance, and it's also. The biggest scandal was really sending elderly people who were ill back into care homes. And that was the biggest scandal. And yes, could that be classed as eugenics? Because it seems to me that people like Boris Johnson, who doesn't seem to care much for the ordinary people. Likewise, his father apparently was on the Victoria Derbyshire show in 2019, and he basically said the British people were so illiterate that they would be unlikely to be able to spell the word Pinocchio. And that's how they see us. And I just don't know why people give the Johnsons and the Hancocks any reverence at all, because they have got into these positions not through good works, but because of the cults they follow and the family line and who they know. So Matthew Hancock has now been proved without a shadow of a doubt that he is not a responsible person. He is not fit, but yet nothing happens to these people, and he's in charge of the healthcare plan. So basically, there's a white paper, and he started by saying, and this was February, so just earlier this month, Mr. Speaker, I come to the House today to set out our white paper on the future of health and care. The past year has been the most challenging in the NHS's proud 72-year history. The health and care system as a whole has risen in the face of great difficulties. Throughout, people have done incredible things and worked in novel and remarkable ways to deliver for patients. And we in this House salute them all, not just the nurse who may have had to care for 2, 3, or 4 times as many patients as he would in normal times, and not just a surgeon who may have been called to treat patients beyond her normal specialism, but the managers across health and care who have come together in teams as part of a health family at local and national level, the public health experts who have been needed more than ever before, and the local authority staff who have embraced change to deliver for their residents, and from all, a sense of teamwork that has been inspiring to see. As a citizen, I care deeply for the whole health and care family, the values they stand for, and the security they represent. They are there for us at the best of times, and they are there for us at the worst of times. Well, that's very questionable, actually, but as Health Secretary, I see it as my role sometimes to challenge, but most of all, to support the health and care family in their defining mission of improving the health of the nation and caring for most in need. I come before the House to present a white paper based firmly on those values, which I believe are values that our whole nation holds dear. The white paper is built on more than 2 years of work with the NHS, local councils, and the public. See that? 2 years of work being based. So this was before, that was when, in the previous government, wasn't it? If it's been going on for 2 years. That's why I was saying it does not matter who you vote in. These papers just keep trundling along until
that's right. Certain's written that. Sorry, I didn't mean to chime in. Sorry, terribly sorry. I didn't mean to switch.
What were you going to say?
Did he actually say that? Yes, he did, but a civil servant probably wrote it for him.
Well, yeah, the white paper is built. It didn't say who's written it. It's built on. I mean, Big Pharma could have written it. I mean, I don't know. It could have been the cat or Boris's new dog. So basically, the paper is built on more than 2 years of work with the NHS, local councils, and the public. I wonder who in the public was actually asked this, and whether their input was actually used in any shape or form. He says that at its heart, this white paper enables greater integration, which basically gives Matthew Hancock ultimate power over the whole NHS. It reduces bureaucracy and supports the way that the NHS and social care work when they work at their best together. Well, it hasn't always worked like that to now, that's for sure. It strengthens accountability to this House, and crucially, it takes the lessons we have learned in this pandemic about how the system can rise to meet huge challenges and frames a legislative basis to support their effort. My job as health secretary is to make system work for those who work in the system, to free up, to empower, and to harness the mission-driven capability of team health and care. The goal of this white paper is to allow this to happen. Well, as I see it, one of the outcomes of this report was basically for people to have health care more in the community, which sort of alarm bells rang in my head, because I thought they don't want people going to hospital anymore. So they want people to basically stay at home. And of course, today we had the mention of smear tests being done now at home. And this is obviously going to be the tip of the iceberg. This integration, this white paper, it then talked about Matthew Hancock effectively being in charge of ensuring that the whole of the UK has fluoride or fluoridated water throughout. Whereas prior to now, it was a case of, well, I don't know, people say it was up to the councils, but I don't know if it's up to the councils or it's actually up to the water authorities. And I know that from, speaking to people, they know people who've worked for the various water authorities, and from time to time they have put fluoride in. Now, of course, I've seen videos about the impact of fluoridation. And of course, what they want you to believe is that it will strengthen your teeth. But the results seem to show that people may have one or two less fillings over their lifetime. But on the flip side, you know what I'm going to say?
Yeah.
We might get taken off the air if we talk about the flip side.
The thing is, it calcifies your pineal gland. That's your central eye there. But there's a sort of a myth. They say that Mr. H put it in the camps. No, it was Stalin. And he did it not only in his gulag camps, but also in his prison service, because they could actually have less guards because it pacified the prisoners. They're all sort of, and when you look at it, they've actually said in Ireland, and this is Southern Ireland, that nobody will be able to leave unless they have I won't mention the word, passport. And there's obviously a few people, yes, there's hardly a whimper from there. Why? Because the whole of Southern Ireland, so I believe, is all fluoridated. No wonder Mr. Handycock wants to fluoridate United Kingdom. Yes, we're going to kill you in 5 years. Yeah, okay, yeah, this fluoride's fantastic. Fluoride is deadly. It really is. And all this stuff about, it saves the children's teeth. Well, they've always got to put a positive there, haven't they? Which, if you look into it, I mean, it's like this current COVID. I won't say it. It's actually FLU. That's all it is. And Hancock at the moment is saying it's everywhere. Well, so is dog poo in the streets. But if you walk in it, it is everywhere. But it always has been everywhere. We're swimming in the sea of unhygienic things, but we've got an immune system that deals with it. And really, I believe this is a cover for an economic problem. This is what the real situation is. It's to usher in communism, obviously.
Well, of course, they haven't mentioned. It doesn't mention any. There's no mention anywhere. There's an article on the internet. I think it's by King's College. They've halved the number of beds in the NHS over the past few years. So, and that was just before the start of the pandemic. The number of beds were pretty much half they were, say, 10 years prior to that. So you're working, and I guess there's probably more space now between beds, and they've had to shuffle beds around. So in actual fact, the number of beds will be reduced again. So we're not comparing either apples and apples, are we, anymore, with the bed system, or even beds and beds. So what he does go on to say is all parts of the system told us that they want to embrace modern technology to innovate to join up. Now wait for it. To share data, to serve people, and ultimately to be trusted to get on and do all that so they can improve patient care and save lives. There's a funny smell in this kitchen, and it's coming from these words here. We have listened. No, we have not. They have not. And these changes reflect what our health and care family have been asking for, building on the NHS's own long-term plan. So what else does it say? It mentions about taking steps such as fluoridation that will improve the health of the nation. The pandemic has made the changes in this white paper more, not less urgent, and it is our role in Parliament to make the legislative changes that are needed. There is no better time than now. So they're looking at integration between different parts of health and care system and I thought we were supposed to have some sort of joined up system already, but obviously what's it? I mean, this is the sharing of the data. That's what really, really hits home. And of course, I mean, I was at a hospital last Friday, and that hospital, that car park is normally absolutely chock-a-block. And I would say it probably was about a third full. So that's my, where is this problem? Is the problem a problem that they have engineered and it hasn't helped by having a lack of beds? And it wasn't helped by sending frail people back into care homes. But I have to say, where do we go from here now, Chris? I mean, this is eugenics.
Well,
I'm just thinking. Well, I was thinking when Boris Johnson. Sorry, I'm thinking. It's just I got this little light bulb went in my head. They don't want to teach our kids, our children, I should say, not the state school children. They want to maybe have their children educated, obviously. There won't be the jobs in the future, so they don't need a lot of us being educated anymore. No. The children are going back to be tested. That's their plan in their heads. They've got all the elderly vaccinated, so now we're going to go on to the children to be tested. And they don't need the elderly either, do they? They just need people of a certain age group to fulfill certain roles, and that's it. They don't want the beginning bit and they don't want the end bit. They just want the people. You know what I'm saying, don't you?
It's eugenics. But then who? I mean, I believe, allegedly, I believe that Hancock, Whitty, Johnson, and the rest of them are psychopaths. Because ask yourself a question: could you or I do that job and sleep at night? No, I couldn't do. I couldn't be Boris Johnson, and nor could you be in Parliament, because you would think these people are there dying. It would go on your conscience. And please see my Monday program, because I went into talking about psychopaths, and I showed a film of Dr. Hare, who's a leading authority, he's a Canadian doctor, on psychopaths, and it was about a minute or two where he explains it perfectly what they're like. And what he said in that film that I showed was really, if you said he is describing Boris Johnson, perfect, it would have been. Or he is describing Matt Hancock, yes, that's what he is. Because what we are presented with all the time is like a kind of staged, managed image. And it's like what I was saying earlier, that official history is what official historians predict. They predict the past. And this is not new, because again, you've got to look in the past to see the future. First World War, the Ministry of Information was set up. And who ran this Ministry of Information? It was a chap called, and if this works,
Who's that picture of?
There is Beaverbrook. And he was a newspaper magnate. This chap Beaverbrook. I'll just show it again. There it is, Beaverbrook. What a charming gentleman, you know.
What's with the hand in his jacket?
I don't know. Perhaps it's a sort of Masonic sign or something. I don't know. But not exactly Mr. Handsome, is he? And he was the Rupert Murdoch of his day. And he was head of disinformation. Sorry, I mean information during World War One. And during World War Two, guess who was Minister? Are we going to go and have a look? It is this chappie, who was a chap called Lord Reith. And Lord Reith was the first Director General. Now think of that word, Director General of the BBC when it was set up. And he covered the national strike, and he didn't show the TUC or anything like that. It was very, very biased. And some people say he was the propaganda writer for the government. But this Lord Reith chap, very interesting that he was the first Director General, which is a military term, isn't it? Look at the civil service. They're all got military terms to them. Interesting. Officers, aren't they? You know, if you go down to the local planners, you speak to this officer and that officer and whatever. Now, Lord Reith, again, Minister of Information. Now, do people believe that in 1945, the Ministry of Information disappeared? No, it just evolved and then went more shadowy, went more behind the scenes. And really, all the BBC is a propaganda tool. They just pump out propaganda. And look at it today. All they do is pump out non-stop propaganda. And they're using all the techniques. And if you know these techniques, then it shouts at you. But unfortunately, people tune into the BBC and say, oh, it must be true because it's the BBC. No, it's propaganda.
Well, I tell you something. I had a guy talking about propaganda. I had what I believe is a guy. It was a picture of a lady called Maud Rickson on my profile, and she'd only set up her account two weeks ago, and she came on to my timeline and basically said what a wonderful person Boris Johnson is, and it was quite, you know, you looked at the picture of Maud and you looked at what she wrote and you just thought, no, you can't put these two together. Only just opened the account a couple of weeks ago. We know that 77th Brigade are alive and kicking. Now, talking about the healthcare, and I just realised now, because of course I've been dealing with this Baroness, and I keep talking about her, Baroness Barbara Young from Scotland, young being the operative word. So, you know, these, you know, we looked at a eugenics video, didn't we, a few days ago, a very short video about how certain families are...
Can I just come in there,
yes.
Caroline? I'm terribly sorry to cut across you. Please don't think I'm rude. Yeah, I am rude. What it is that you found a fantastic video from the 1937, I believe it was, which was talking about eugenics. And I was going to play it tonight. Now, the real problem is that you're broadcasting on Facebook. I'm on YouTube. And if I broadcast any of those films, it echoes back. So if you cut your microphone, people won't be able to hear it. So they just have silence. And all you hear is, all you do, you'll be able to see it and hear it on YouTube, but not on Facebook. And you notice there was no introduction tune tonight. And the reason why is that my last Monday's program, I did have an introduction tune and I can't save it. YouTube will not let me save it. And it has a list of the tunes in. I think it's because of a kind of, you're allowed, you can actually put these things on your video. Yes, but there's a copyright. So we're up a gum tree at the moment. So unless we can get around these problems.
So that 1937 video that you were just talking about was basically where they were saying 50%. What was that 50? You know, they had it in layers, 50-50, and then
That's
the
right,
division.
yes.
Can you remember how that worked?
Well, I can remember half of it, but what they were basically showing was that there is, sorry, say a rogue element, and they showed you one family that was swan uppers, and these are the people that deal with royal swans. And one of them was an excellent rower, and etc. etc. And then they showed you another family who was sort of poor and down and out, where they showed you a load of village idiots. And then they showed you this family tree showing that out of I think it was about 10 children that they had, half of them were village idiots, and sort of you know. But what they didn't say, of course, is that the royals have had because they're close cousins that are marrying, they're making it look as if the royals were the elite of the elite. The elites, these people that think they are genetically pure, no, because they have a lot of genetic problems. And there was in the 1930s, they say that a lot of babies were actually swapped round because the close cousins are causing mutations, genetic mutations. I mean, when you look at Charles, I mean, he's not exactly the sharpest knife in the box, is he? I mean, he's had the best tutors and that, and all he is a puppet, and he just says the words, what they feed into him. He's not
climate
bright.
change. Climate change. He says always
That's
says
right.
2 words. Well,
I've just had
I
an
mean,
idea. Shall I put that film on my YouTube channel after this? It'll take a little bit of time. It might take a couple of days. I think I can, if I can copy it, and if I can put this on my Eric Von Essex YouTube channel, it's not very long. How long is it, Caroline? About 10 minutes, something like that. People will be able to see it. And that'd be quite interesting.
That would set the scene, wouldn't it? So basically, this film was back to 1937. It covered about 4 different families, as you say. There was one family who were very proficient in sport, in swimming and rowing. Then you had another family who, and it was certain names, and that's why when people ask me about names, it is important to a great extent. And you've got the name Johnson. We've got Boris Johnson. We've got Stanley Johnson. And we actually have, strangely, it was Alan Johnson from the Labour Party that promoted or announced, I should say, announced that Baroness Young was going to have a key role in something called the Care Quality Commission. Now, I haven't really had any dealings with the Care Quality Commission. I was focusing on the RSPB element, and I was focusing on the Environment Agency element. But of course, I'm looking at Matthew Hancock's speech here. And of course, he talks about the health of the population and being held to account by the Care Quality Commission. Well, I don't think I'm wrong on this, but this Baroness Young was involved in the Care Quality Commission. Can you check that out for me, please, Chris? Because I'm just doing this off the top of my head. It says
no.
Care Quality Commission. Wasn't she there with Alan Johnson? Was it about 2008 that she went into the Care Quality Commission?
I don't know, but I think this would be best if we cover this on the next program. Would that be okay?
Okay, so he just says our goal is to integrate decision making at a local level between the NHS and local authorities as much as is practically possible, and ensure decisions about local health can be taken as locally as possible. Now, that's all very well and good, but we've also got in the mind's eye, we've got the Coronavirus Act of 2020, and that had very serious implications for people in the care system. So what he's saying here does not seem necessarily compatible, or at least it's fluffed up given a totally different perspective to our understanding of the Coronavirus Act and what can happen to people in the social setting. Because I know a lot of social groups, care groups, were very concerned about the Act. So maybe somebody, I'm not a healthcare expert, and I wouldn't wish to give anybody the wrong advice, but I do know that one of the mainstream media outlets had got grave concerns about this bill. And I guess if you stay in the matrix in the UK, this bill could be the most important white paper to be put through Parliament in our lifetimes. To have fluoride in, do you see what I mean? Because
I think we need to. I mean, are you okay for next Wednesday?
I am.
Caroline?
I am.
I think we need to
said we were going to just do an hour tonight, didn't we? But I would like to say something else then.
I'll be straight with you. I haven't had time to research deeply this program because I've been doing proper work. Well, so not proper work, well, architectural work. I mean, I did mention the fact that I think this was on my own little show. And maybe not everybody saw the little show on Saturday that I did in between this and last week's. But this is a paper, a eugenics paper, which has been funded by the Wellcome Trust. So one has to ask this, I think it's 384-page thesis, which was submitted for a Doctor of Philosophy at the University of Oxford. And it says, Eugenics and Christian Mission, Charitable Welfare in Transition, London and New York, circa 1865 to 1940. So Wellcome Trust, and this was written by a guy called Graham Joseph Baker, Balliol College, Oxford. Trinity term 2011. You can find the document on the internet. You have to ask yourself, why in 2011? What was happening in 2011? It was just before the Olympic Games ceremony, wasn't it, in 2012? That's right, 2012.
Yeah, so it's like, why would a healthcare charity look at eugenics and be sponsoring people writing eugenics theses? Why? Why a healthcare charity?
And look at that opening ceremony. That was predicting what's happening now. I mean, why did they have all those NHS beds and things like that? It was very, very creepy. And I would say satanic. I didn't see the Olympics. I've only seen a little bit of the opening ceremony, and that was enough for me. It was very satanic. And what I would like to go into on the next program is I've been looking back further, and I haven't gone into it very deeply, but there's been a eugenics program since the 18th century, because what people don't realize is that this was in the 1790s, they actually had this mass vaccination program in the United Kingdom against cowpox, and people were coming out of the stations and staggering and dying, and people that refused to have it were shipped to Australia. And then you come a little bit forward, and there was actual talk of shipping the poor, who were a problem, to the colonies to work. So what did they do? Anybody that was convicted of a minor crime, even stealing a loaf of bread or anything like that, they were shipped to Australia to get them out of the way of Britain. And then you come forward, there's lots of evidence that there's been a kind of eugenics program all the way along. And this is what I've been looking into, because again, to look at the future and look at what's happening now, you've got to have some degree of what has gone on in the past. And I think that we could probably, if that's okay with you, Karen, we could cover part of that. And I think also we've given a lot of information, or you have given rather a lot of information over. We could encapsulate it, shall we say, and put it all together in a kind of simple, more easy to understand way. Because when you get a lot of information, you think, well, hang on, we need to put this together, because after the program, and you probably have to do this as well, you sit there and think, well, and it's like putting the jigsaw pieces together to form the overall picture. But what the overall picture does appear to be is that there's been a eugenics program for several hundred years, if not more. So,
and there are certain names that keep cropping up, like Young and Johnson and Hancock and all these certain people, shall we say. What I'd like to just finish off with, because I did research this for last week, we think we've left the European Union, but in actual fact, we are part of something called the European Health Committee. And the Committee of Ministers set up this European Health Committee in 1954 to encourage closer European cooperation on the promotion of health. So it's not something we really hear anything about, but it says its idealistic aim was to create conditions which would safeguard and improve the health of European citizens. Well, I guess having seen an article today, which I posted on my timeline, I think it was Galicia in Spain, they are making it mandatory to have vaccinations. Failure to do so could lead to a fine of 60,000 euros. What about this? Improve the health of European citizens. To force the issue is, how does this come in? This is European cooperation. This is just global communism. They've just laid all the building blocks, haven't they? And it's all been sat there. And, it is so disappointing that we used to, when I was in a member of a political party, and we had so many members of the European Parliament in that Parliament, MEPs they were called, that they were supposed to be our eyes and ears, and they were supposed to come and report back. But I do feel that a lot of people, in truth, have been very short-changed with the service we got from the people that we voted into that parliament. I know they couldn't do anything, but I think perhaps they could have made more of what was really going on. And, I never knew anything about this European Health Committee, for example. So there we go. We're all part of, it would seem, the United Nations, and we're just carrying on. I mean, I see people say, "Oh, things are not going to plan," and I say, "Well, okay, why are things not going according to plan then?" And then there's a deathly silence. But I would like to say, just to finish off with, because we know that there's supposed to be some sort of private prosecution going on against Matthew Hancock, and somebody sent me a front page of what was allegedly the Daily Mirror from a couple of days ago, and it suggested it was a picture of Matthew Hancock being served with a private prosecution. You heard that. Well, I actually went out and got the paper for that day, and that was not the front page of that paper. So unless it's it's the same date. So unless was it a photoshopped picture, do you think?
I don't know. I'll look into it, and I really don't know, because on these things there's a lot of fakes going around, and I'd like to thank one of the people in the comments section. We've got really nice people, John, who picked me up on, politely I hasten to add, I read out something that was from supposed to be from C.S. Lewis, and he's an expert on this, and he said it's fake. It's been written recent, and I was fooled by it, and there's a lot of people being fooled by it, and it said it was written in 1942. No, it wasn't. And this is what our enemy is doing: is putting out false things, false statements to you think, oh, Hancock's been arrested. I hope it's true. And I'm finding this all the way along. There's a lot of these fake news items going out, and I fell for it. I read it out. I was wrong. And thanks for pulling me up. And also the comments, somebody called Chris Lucas, thank you very much, Chris, has advised me on some tweaks I can do with YouTube, and keep the fingers crossed, the comments are coming in okay now. And it was just I didn't know about these little tweaks you can do, and so hopefully
it's good. We're not experts, are we? We're not experts.
I mean, that's right, we're not experts. Can we just go through a couple of in the chat room, a few comments? Have you got a bit of time? We got here Cider Guy said, look forward to you going down the route Chris Churchill's father. Yes, that was about Jack the Ripper. That's quite lengthy. It's Prince Eddie, and apparently the prostitutes of those days, the 1880s, they tried to blackmail the royals. So it's quite an interesting story, and I think it's very. Now we got here DJ B2 said Matt Hancock is Klaus Schwab's little acolyte. Yes. But I'm also talking about Boris Johnson's father, talking about people who can't spell Pinocchio. Squirrel Girl said, interesting, he chose the name of a character whose nose grows with lines. That's a good. Please excuse me not reading. You've got a lot. There's a lot of comments here, so please don't take it personally if I don't read your comment out. I do apologise. And now this is an interesting one. Emmon, he's the wise guy. He came up with some fantastic ideas last Monday. Stanley Johnson is a real insider too. That's Boris's father. He was a spy and also worked for the World Bank. Now that's interesting. Now, Linda
he's on Celebrity Gogglebox as well.
Is it? I don't have a telly. I don't know. It says that white paper is fit for purpose in the Lavi. There it says here, DIY cancer test now. Wow, thanks NHS. Well, this is another subject, because I do believe all these tests are for the pharmaceutical industry. They're not for your health. It's a bit like, have your car have a free winter check. Yeah, have a free winter check, and I find everything under the sun that's wrong with it that isn't wrong with it. And I think this is what it is. It's for pharmaceutical profits. Remember, a fit person does not make profits for the pharmaceutical industry. I'm very, very suspicious of the lot. And it says here, Emin again, that interview made me realise that now they've downsized the economy. They will want to downsize the population to maintain stable growth. That's a very, very good comment. That's right. They've downsized the economy for a downsized population. Anything Matt Hancock recommends is straight from the World Economic Forum, as he is a puppet to Klaus Schwab. Yes, I'd agree with that. And I'll just have to, I'm terribly sorry, I'm going to have to sort of jump a few here, because we've been here all night, I think, reading these out. And we got here, this started in the 1990s. It's a 25 to 50 year plan. That's DJ B2. You got a good point there. Was it? Eamon says, what next? DIY heart surgery. Just follow along the next available web now. And now someone's asked me, oh, it's Angela. Hello, Angela. Angela Davis. Chris, could you share that film? Sorry, could you share that film to me, please, when you have time? Unfortunately, I missed Monday's show. Well, it's still on there. I don't know what film you mean, whether it was the one I did of Dr. Hare, where I show a little extract, but it's still on there. It's last Monday's show. So if you could clarify that, I'd be grateful. We got Soul Bollocks says, The Hidden Hand. Yes, I think we call, no, we won't go into that.
Is it The Hidden Hand or The Invisible? There's a really good book called The Invisible Hand. Is that the one that you're talking about? But I've got another Zoom call to go on to. So I'm going to love you and leave you, Chris. or Eric, or whoever you want to be tonight. And can I see you again 6 o'clock next Wednesday? And we'll pull all this together then, because you were going to look at the Darwinism as well. And on the news today, I don't know if you saw, but there was a time capsule that Darwin has just released to is it English Heritage today? Because Down House is where he lived in Kent, wasn't it, Darwin? And that house was handed over to the English Heritage. So yes, it was. He'd gone round on the Beagle, hadn't he, Darwin? Charles Darwin.
That's
1931 to 1931.
No,
or 1831. 1831. 1831 to 1836, and he collected shells from all over the world. So that's what was in. So yes, we need to look at Darwin. We need to look at Kellogg's, and you've got your homework, Chris.
Sorry.
And you've got some homework now.
I've got some homework to do. And
I'll get my red pen out.
We'll end up next time. So what you do, I believe you've got to dash off now. I'll round the program off. So if you've got to dash off, and all I'll say is thank you very much, everybody, for joining us tonight. Please join me on Monday at 8 o'clock, same place, and Caroline and I next Wednesday at 6 o'clock at the earlier time. That's UK time. And thank you for everybody in the comments and everybody. I think we worked the comments section out now, and but I'm still going to look for
share. Please
That's
share.
Right. Please share, and thank you very much for joining us. And I'll see you next Monday, and you see us both next Wednesday. Thank you very much,
Chris.
and
Bye,
good night.
bye, everybody. Please share. Bye.